Welcome on in to This Week in Big Sky Basketball, sponsored by Jimmy John's. I'm your host, Denise Thompson. Just 3 weeks remain until the Big Sky Basketball Championships in Boise, and the Montana men and Montana State women continue to lead the race for the league's regular season title. Today, we'll visit with Montana senior guard Sayeed Pridgett, Montana State women's head coach Tricia Binford, and Colter Nuanez of Skyline Sports. First, let's take a look at what's been happening in Big Sky men's basketball. Montana extended its win streak to 5 games last week as the Grizz defeated Weber State and Idaho handily at home to move to 12-3 in league play. Sayeed Pridgett has led the Grizz in scoring each of their last 5 games, averaging 24.5 points, 8 rebounds, and 5.5 assists per game. Following closely behind the Grizz are Eastern Washington and Northern Colorado at 10-4. The Eagles split action last week with a win at Portland State after falling to Idaho at home, while UNC recorded road wins over Northern Arizona and Sacramento State. Montana State moved to 4th in the standings at 8-6 after also picking up home wins over Idaho State and Weber State. Northern Arizona sits in 5th at 8-7, collecting a win over Southern Utah to close out the week. Rounding out the week's wins were Sacramento State over Southern Utah and Portland State over Idaho. We now bring in one of the top players in the Big Sky this season, Sayeed Pridgett, who's the lone player in the league ranking in the top 5 in scoring and rebounding. Sayeed, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well this morning. So, you're averaging over 23 points per game during Montana's 5-game win streak. What's been working for you during the second half of conference play?
What's been working for me the most is taking advantage of the mismatch. A lot of guys have been playing me with a lot of 5-men have been on me. And a lot of teams have been playing with a lot of smaller guys on me, so I've been able to use my speed or my size against whichever is guarding me.
So, Montana lost a majority of its scoring from last season. As one of the leaders on last year's squad, how much weight do you feel coming into this season, knowing you'd be one of the few that had a lot of playing experience?
There's a lot of weight on my shoulders. Just knowing that we missed a lot of people underestimated just because we're young. So just knowing that I could be one of those guys that lead my team and be a very good leader means a lot.
So the Grizz experienced a lot of growing pains during the non-conference schedule with some tough opponents. What's changed for this team since then, and who has really stepped up in your eyes?
There's been a lot of change, just knowing we've had a lot of different lineups. And just, like I said, our team has lost a lot, so we have a lot of new guys, and it was hard for us to learn how to play, so it's just been taking a lot of time. But it's hard for me to just name one person that stepped up for us. Obviously, Kendall's been the biggest piece besides the freshmen, because he was a vital part last year of our team. So I would say Kendall's been the biggest step up for us, because once he's going, he can't be stopped.
Absolutely. So you were recruited by several D1 schools coming out of high school. What made you choose to go to Montana?
Well, my decision based on Montana was more family-oriented. Me and my family felt like coming here would just be like family, because when they were recruiting me, they were almost at every one of my AAU games. They sent me more mail than any other school have sent me. So they just showed me that they were interested in me. And when I got here on my visit, Coach Travis and the rest of the coaching staff made it feel like home.
So once you're done playing for Montana, what do you hope are your next steps?
Once I'm done playing with Montana, I want to graduate, and I'll see where basketball takes me from there. If not, then I'll just use my degree to get me a job wherever that goes.
Absolutely. So you guys turn your attention to rival Montana State this Saturday, a team that's won 3 of their last 4 games since you met. What's key to coming away with a win in Bozeman?
What's key with this game is we all know that this game means a lot to both teams, especially outside of us. I've said this before when we played them last time. We're not only playing for our team, we're playing for the community, because this game is very big in the whole state of Montana.
We appreciate you talking with us today. Best of luck this week and the rest of the season.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That's Montana senior guard Sayeed Pridgett. We'll take a short break, then we'll be back with Montana State coach Tricia Binford and discuss what's been going on in Big Sky women's hoops. That's all coming up when we return on This Week in Big Sky Basketball.
Need a hotel for work or just a night away? With over 50 hotels open and more on the way, we want to be your home away from home. My Place Hotels is proud to be the official hotel of the Big Sky Conference.
Welcome back to This Week in Big Sky Basketball. I'm your host, Denise Thompson. The 2020 Big Sky Men's and Women's Basketball Championships presented by My Place Hotels are back in Boise, Idaho. Visit BigSkyInBoise.com to purchase tickets and get hotel information. The Big Sky Conference will take over Boise March 9th through the 14th, and we want to see you there. Now, let's take a look at what's been happening in Big Sky Women's Basketball. One team has emerged as a clear favorite in a conference race while 3 games separate 2nd through 7th in the conference standings. Idaho and Northern Arizona have both reached a double-digit win mark this season, with both teams recording 10 wins. Northern Arizona finds themselves in 3rd place with a 10-5 record as they set a new school record for conference wins. The Lumberjacks split their games this week with a victory over Northern Colorado before dropping Saturday's matchup at Southern Utah. Idaho holds a half-game lead over NAU with a 10-4 record after 2 victories this past week. The Vandals picked up victories over Eastern Washington and Portland State to stay in the hunt for one of the top 2 spots. Montana State has been slowly separating themselves from the rest of the pack as they sit at the top spot with a 13-1 record as the Bobcats are riding a 9-game win streak. Their last and only conference loss came on January 9th when Idaho got the best of them. Montana State is looking to clinch a first-round bye at the Big Sky Championships this week. That could become a reality for the Bobcats if everything falls in their favor. Joining us now on the show to talk about their success this season is Montana State women's head coach Tricia Binford. Coach Binford, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So conference play always seems to take its toll as teams get later in the season. What have you guys done to help mitigate this and keep your team playing at such a high level?
I think it just kind of started with our preseason schedule. We really challenged ourselves to have a very adverse road travel schedule in the preseason. I think that really prepared us for just how challenging the Big Sky Conference is and the travel going in and out. And then you have to rely on upperclassmen. We've got a lot of experience who have been through this process before, and I think they've done a great job bringing our underclassmen along.
You just touched a little bit on experience, and you guys always seem to have 4 to 5 players scoring in double figures on a nightly basis. What's it like to coach a team that has so many scoring threats?
Well, it's really fun having just a really selfless team, and I think we established that even in the preseason. It's kind of we take a lot of pride in how we share the ball, how we find the open player, and just kind of take what the defense gives us. And I think this team really loves to be selfless, and we give a lot of credit to the one more pass. And so when that starts getting going and the ball gets moving, it gets to be a lot of fun.
I know as a coach you try not to pay attention to preseason polls, but the Bobcats were picked to favorite in both of the preseason polls. How do you think the team has handled that pressure and expectations this season?
Well, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as well with everybody we had returning and the addition of Fallon Freegee in the mix and then our freshman class. I think one of the reasons we put that preseason the schedule together was the experience that we had and the expectations we did have for this season going into it. So when those polls came out, I don't think it was anything other than what we wanted and expected from ourselves. I think every team goes into the season with that type of mentality, and we wanted to be prepared for getting everybody's best punch, so to speak. You're going to get everybody's best effort every single night. I think there's a responsibility for that, and that standard had to start with our leadership and our upperclassmen. I think they've done a great job of setting the tone every day in practices.
This weekend, you play Montana. In your first game against the Lady Grizz, you guys beat them in overtime. What's it like coaching in this rivalry where the whole state becomes so invested?
Yeah, it's like coaching in a championship game. You get to have that twice a year, and the atmospheres, the environment. It's a lot louder. It's hard to hear. So trying to stay locked into what you're trying to execute on both ends of the floor. There's a lot more butterflies and just trying to get your team to settle in and do what they do. I thought the first time around, Montana just did a great job of getting us out of sorts, and we're going to have to do a much better job this time around. Really felt similar to some of our preseason games on the road. South Dakota State, I think, has a great home court advantage and atmosphere, and, just trying to prepare for those elements and those atmospheres. And you want to put your team in as many of those kind of tight situations as possible, so they learn how to play under pressure and have great composure down the stretch. And we've certainly had a lot of those games this year, with quite a few overtimes. And I feel like every game we just get a little bit better in those situations.
We talked a little bit about the extra pass, you guys having so many scoring threats. How has this group of upperclassmen developed over the years that have led to your recent success?
Yeah, I just think when you get a familiarity with what you're doing, I think sometimes you get out of your own head of thinking the game, and now you're just playing the game. And I think this time of year, even the second time you're facing opponents, you're seeing your opponents doing the same. So they're just executing at a better pace and a better flow, and just starting to make some reads. And when you have experience, you kind of have the advantage of that early on. And when you get to second round and even heading into the tournament, now everybody has a little bit of that feel and flow. So now your execution and not playing with mistakes really comes to the table. And I think our experience has allowed our practices and our underclassmen to pick up things a little bit quicker and smoother. You don't take time and drills for them to figure it out. They have to jump in and see how the upperclassmen are doing it. And that's forced a very quick learning curve for our underclassmen.
You played basketball in the Big Sky back when Boise State was a conference member. What has it been like to now coach in the conference and to see the growth of the game?
Well, it's humbling to be able to coach in the same conference that you competed in. I just love this conference. I think one of the things that's special about the Big Sky in general is every single night you better bring your A game, because anybody can win on a given night. And I think the parity of this conference has always been something that makes it extremely special. I think the travel of the Big Sky, one of the things that I have noticed is our level of competition compared to regional other conferences. And I'd put us up there against the Mountain West, the WAC, the West Coast. I think there's so many competitive conferences in this area that we're representing ourselves very well. That's one thing that I've seen really, really grow. And I think the conference in general continuing to get better. You've got so many programs doing a great job. You got a lot of experienced coaches in the Big Sky Conference that are really also challenging others to grow. You look at John Newley, Seton Sodowoski, you've got Wendy Schuler, you've got Shannon, who's been in the Big Sky and for so many years. I think there's a lot of strength and core in that, and I think that's really special.
Here at the conference office, we definitely appreciate you and all that you're doing, in Bozeman, and to enhance what we have going on for women's basketball. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, and good luck for your games this week.
Oh, thank you so much. Fun to be a part of it.
Thanks. When we come back, we'll preview the week ahead in the Big Sky Conference. We'll also have a visit from Colter Nuanez of Skyline Sports. And we'll note where you can find Big Sky games on TV this weekend. Stay with us. You're listening to This Week in Big Sky Basketball.
Dinner's great. It's one of your top 3 favorite meals. You just don't want to have to make it. Well, with Jimmy John's, you don't have to. Whether you live in a sandwich delivery zone or head into the store, you can always get a freaky fresh sandwich. Click to order at jimmyjohns.com.
Welcome back to the final segment of this week's episode of This Week in Big Sky Basketball. I'm your host, Denise Thompson. The Big Sky Conference airs all of its live stream sporting events on Pluto TV for free, including up to 700 football, men's and women's basketball, volleyball, and selected soccer, softball, and track and field events. Watch online at www.pluto.tv or download the app. All Big Sky basketball games can be seen on Watch Big Sky and Pluto TV. In men's action this week, Montana State hosts rival Montana in a key matchup in Bozeman. The Bobcats will begin the week on the road against Portland State. Idaho and Eastern Washington welcoming Northern Arizona and Sacramento State, while Northern Colorado hosts Southern Utah before the Bears travel to Idaho State and Southern Utah faces Weber State on the road. On the women's side, we have so many matchups that you don't want to miss. Northern Arizona and Sacramento State will host Idaho and Eastern Washington. Southern Utah will host Northern Colorado and Weber State, and Montana State will host Portland State and Montana. Idaho State will also host Weber State and Northern Colorado. Hey, Big Sky fans, we now welcome on in Colter Nuanez of Skyline Sports. Colter, how are you doing today?
Very good, Denise. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So another week of Big Sky basketball, and Montana State has climbed the 4th in the Big Sky standings, which brings Montana on Saturday for a crucial matchup. Do you see the Bobcats finally ending their unlucky streak to the Grizz?
Well, it's going to be interesting because even with the Cat Grizz game on the horizon, with this new schedule and the lone wolf situation and the fact that Portland State is the lone wolf, the Cats are going to have to figure out how to prepare for a road game at Portland State on Thursday before they get ready for the Grizz. So that in itself is a challenge. I think that we saw it last time around. The Grizz were the ones that had to do this exact scenario last time, play in Portland on Thursday and then host the Cats. And the Grizz, that was one of their league losses this year. They dropped one to Portland State on the road. That's probably the worst showing Montana's had in league play so far this year. But then Montana got back on track by beating the Cats once again. They shot the lights out in the first half of that game. And so you wonder, were they overlooking Portland State? Now, sure, I think that Portland State's been the toughest matchup in the league for the Grizz, actually, these last couple of years. For whatever reason, it seems they get up for that game, Portland State does. It's been the same thing with the Cats. So it's going to be an interesting one because probably one of the games of the year so far in the Big Sky was Portland State and Montana State in Bozeman. That went all the way down to the wire. Harold Frey hit a three to put Montana State up, which looked like a game winner. But then Holland Woods went coast to coast and hit one with about 1.5 seconds left, and Portland State won that game by one. So the Cats are going to have to figure out how to have a good performance Thursday in Portland first before they can get another shot at the Grizz. But I will say this about Montana State. I think that, to me, they're the surprise of the league. And I think that the fact that they're alone in fourth right now is a true testament to how hard Danny Schmickel's got the guys playing. I mean, he'll be the first to tell you, they're not the most talented team in the league. You know, when you compare them and teams like Southern Utah and Portland, I don't think the Cats have more talent than those two teams. But they're ahead of them right now in the standings because of how hard they've been playing, especially on defense. So I think that Schmickel is a real deal Coach of the Year candidate in his first year. But this last 6 games for the Cats is going to be brutal. They got to do this, navigate this stretch here with a road game before the rivalry, and then they still have to go to Sac State and NAU, which is one of the toughest trips in the league, and then they got to come home for their last homestand against Southern Utah and Northern Colorado, which are both tough teams as well. So a lot to be determined for the Cats, but as of right now, Spriggle's done a great job. It'll be interesting to see how Montana State performs Thursday within the rivalry on the horizon on Saturday.
And you really just touched on it. You know, it's going to be a dogfight for a top 5 seed with 6 teams currently within 2.5 games of each other. So you just talked about the Bobcats. If you add the Lumberjacks in there, you know, they currently hold those last 2 spots right now. Do you see those teams staying in the top 5, or is there another team that you think might make a late move?
It could be so interesting to see that part, too, because I think that Weber State was the team that could have crept up and nipped at a lot of teams' heels. But Jared Hardy didn't play in Missoula on Thursday against the Grizz. And that really sent them back. They looked like they had no confidence. And then he did play Saturday in Bozeman, but he said, I mean, it sounded like he was nowhere close to 100%. I wonder when Weaver reaches the point of no return where they maybe shut Harding down until the league tournament. I mean, if they're outside of that 5th spot, then I really think in this year's tournament, 6th through 10th, all those teams are so even. That, I mean, obviously you want the bye, but if you can't get the bye, I think going in fresh is going to be the key. And so I think you want to have Jarek Harding back healthy. But then you look at some of these other teams. I thought NAU had a great weekend last weekend, particularly to bounce back. They got destroyed by Northern Colorado, but then they bounced back and beat Southern Utah. They had to have it after that, what could have been a demoralizing win, but then they post a great win over a rival. So I think that's really good for NAU's confidence. On the other side, I think Southern Utah had a golden opportunity to really solidify themselves as that 4th team last weekend, and they didn't get it done. They lost lopsided games to both Sac State and Northern Arizona. So the Thunderbirds is going to be interesting to see where they turn because they're a team that has a ton of talent. It's just all about which version shows up. So, I mean, they play a ton of guys, but I think that their rotation has had not a lot of continuity in it, only because they change their starting lineup so often because they do have so much talent. But this time of year, I don't know if you can do that anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how Southern Utah finishes down the stretch because I do think they have top 5 talent, certainly. They just got to put it all together. And then the other team is Portland State, and I think this is going to be a week where we see what Portland State's made of because they had a great win over Idaho last night. They really took it to the Vandals, and then they got to play Montana State at home on Thursday. And where are they at? Because if you look at their schedule, it's just so interesting. You know, they have played some of their best games and had some of their best wins against the best teams in the league, but then they've also lost some games to some teams that aren't necessarily in the top half of the standings. So which Portland State team shows up? Are they healthy? Having Matt Hauser back is big time for them. I think that he is definitely their best perimeter scorer. And when you pair him with Holland Woods, that's a pretty good backcourt duo. So I think that we still have a ton to be determined. Only 3 weeks left in the regular season. And I don't really know how it's going to play out. I think we'll know a little bit more after this week just because we have some crucial head-to-heads like Montana State at Portland State, like Montana State against Montana. But I think that there's some other matchups around the league that'll have some big ramifications too. And to me, Denise, I think it's going to come down to not only how these teams play in these games, but also if you drop one, how do you bounce back? That was the key to what NAU did this last weekend. You get throttled by Northern Colorado, but then you bounce back. That's so big for a team like NAU. So I think that's going to be the key. How do you respond, whatever the given result is on a given night?
And we all know that when it comes to the tournament, it's whoever puts their best foot forward is going to come out with the win. And right now on the women's side, Idaho State is in the mix for a first-round bye at the Big Sky Championships after a great defensive effort in the last couple of weeks. Are we overlooking their ability to be a bracket buster of sorts coming into the tournament? We know they have a history of, putting on a show when it comes to it since we've gone to neutral sites.
That's going to be the most fascinating part is that Idaho State's been better when they don't have a bye. Every year that they haven't had a bye, they have wrecked the bracket. They've got to at least the semis, and they got to the championship game once as well. The year that they knocked off Montana State in the first round, or I guess in the second round on that half-court buzzer beater. So sometimes I think that them playing early has helped them get their feet wet and really helped them build momentum. That said, they've run out of gas in the championship game twice during these neutral site tournaments. But this Idaho State team is really interesting because Stephen Sobolewski's done a tremendous job. You lose players like Grace Kenyon and Sailor Grandin, who are such key players to your program. And you have a girl like Dora Golis coming off an ACL injury. I don't really know if they knew what to expect out of her. And she's been great. Dora Golis was 36 points against Montana on Saturday. So I think Idaho State's playing well right now. And they're always going to give teams trouble because Stephen Sobolewski puts a higher priority on rebounding and physicality than anybody in the league. They're going to be the most physical team in the league year in and year out. And they also run so many crazy screen actions on offense. They're really hard to guard. And when you don't have a couple days to prepare for that, when it's just a one-day turnaround, it makes it even harder to guard. So I think Idaho State is definitely one of the teams that could make some noise. And it seems like after a tough start to league play, Sobolewski's really gotten them playing well. So as we know, Seton does a great job. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league, and he'll have them ready for the tournament no matter what. But it's just ironic that sometimes a bye is not actually necessarily an advantage for Idaho State when it comes to the tournament. But that said, I'm sure that that's what they're gunning for. That's what they're going to want. That's probably a goal of their program. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Absolutely. Days off, are always great to relax your legs a little bit. But who do you think right now would be the dark horse on the women's side?
It's interesting because I think that a lot of teams could be the dark horse because I think that there's one team that's absolutely the definitive favorite, and that's Montana State. They're rolling right now. I know Weber State is really down this year, and they're taking, they're really going through a rebuild. But Montana State, it was like an offensive clinic in the second half of that game on Saturday. They did whatever they wanted. They've gotten to the point now where they share the ball. I think when we talk about the league MVP race, I think Fallon Pridgett is the league MVP on the women's side as of this point. And I think you got to just throw the statistics out. She's in the top 10 in scoring and rebounding, but she's not in the top 5. But that's because they share the ball so well. They've had 5 or 6 double-figure scorers each of their last 6 games. That's amazing to have 5 double-figure scorers for 6 games in a row. Very impressive on the Montana State side. But as far as, because they're so far out in front in terms of how well they've been playing, only 1 league loss. They've won 9 in a row, and they're really executing at a fantastic level. I think you could say that any of the other teams, even if they are in kind of the second, third, fourth spots, are the dark horses, even though they might have first-round byes. I think that NAU could fit that dark horse role just because, even though they are in the top 3 right now, they're a squad that I think no one really expected this out of this year coming into Lori Payne's 3rd year, and they've been playing with great energy, great effort, and I think that they could be a team that could surprise some people. And then, Idaho is interesting because John Newley is always going to have his teams ready for the tournament. So is Seton Sobolewski at Idaho State. But the Lady Grizz are so interesting because I think on paper, actually, Montana is the second most talented team in the league behind Montana State. The Lady Grizz, though, have been so volatile this year. Sometimes when they're rolling and they're running and gunning, getting out in transition, and they're using their athleticism, they're tough to beat. They're one of the best teams in the league. But other times, they just have these horrible shooting slumps, and when they have to get into the half court and they can't use their athleticism, that's a huge weakness. And you saw it in Pocatello on Saturday. You saw it last time they played the Bobcats in the Cat Grizz game. I mean, they were rolling in that game. They're up 14 points going in the fourth quarter, and then they collapsed. And they went 0-16 from the floor in that final frame, and Montana State rallied all the way back, forced overtime. So, Lady Grizz probably have the highest ceiling, lowest floor as far as what they can be, and then when they're not played well, how much they can struggle. But, as far as dark horses, I'm not sure, because Portland State has really been struggling here the second half of the year. And so Southern Utah is better than people expect. I think Rebecca Cardenas is always going to give you a shot. But even though NAU's in the top three, I still think they have that dark horse status, because I don't think people expected them to be here. I think every win they get has been sort of surprising. But at some point, we got to take them for real, because they have had a great year.
Well, if there's any time for a team to step up, it's definitely during rivalry week, and we have a lot of rivalry games going on, and it's going to make for these teams to have a lot of energy and effort to be able to come away with that win. Thanks so much for joining us on the show, Colter. We appreciate it, as always.
Thank you so much for having me. Talk to you next week.
Special thanks to our guest today, Montana senior guard Sayeed Pridgett, Montana State women's head coach Tricia Binford, and Skyline Sports Colter Nuanez. I'm Denise Thompson saying enjoy this week in Big Sky basketball.